Reality TV shows have gained the reputation of being vapid, and sometimes this statement holds its weight. In 2022, a reality TV show that centered on showcasing body positivity, christened The Watch Out for the Big Girls, was released on Amazon Prime Video. The Watch Out for the Big Girls is a contestant show where the dancers would compete for the coveted opportunity to join Lizzo's team as a professional dancer in her live performances and tour, and thus this sets the stage for the most shocking lawsuit this year. 3 of the contestants would be selected to go on tour with Lizzo as her professional dancers, and equally to the filming of the TV show. The selected dancers would be subjected to psychological examination and would equally sign a waiver of privilege of confidentiality and consent to evaluation. An important clause in the waiver stipulates that the information disclosed during the psychic evaluation may be provided to the production involved in the show. Thus, between May and July 2021, Miss Davis, Miss Rodriguez, and Miss Williams were officially booked by Lizzo to perform with Lizzo as her professional dancers on her live tours and performances. However, this coveted role would soon be a bane in their flesh, as they enumerated in their lawsuit, of the hostile work environment they endured. Religious harassment. No job and no one will stop me from talking about the Lord. These would be the sentiments that were echoed by one of the judges, instructors, and captain of Lizzo's dance team, the one Miss Quigley. Miss Quigley was a staunch Christian who never failed to seize an opportunity to proselytize her dogmatic beliefs, specifically regarding Christianity and sexuality. Miss Quigley would relentlessly minister on abstinence, which is a staple of religion. However, she would take it upon herself to not only deride those who engage in premarital sex, but also she would find the marble she would mold into David. With Miss Davis, one of the dancers, upon discovering that she was a virgin, she would gravitate towards her, and she never met a moment she didn't like to bring up her virginity. Miss Quigley would allegedly broadcast her virginity in extensive detail in interviews and equally on social media. This was done without the consent of Miss Davis. Deriving from the past, religious sycophancy, which expresses itself in the form of sexual repression, has always unearthed copious amounts of debauchery. Whilst Miss Quigley brimmed with righteous indignation by impressing fervently her views on premarital affairs, in which she posits as a parameter of being a proper Christian, in sharp contrast to her dogma, she would have no qualms crossing further boundaries in oversharing her sexual fantasies in the presence of an uncomfortable dance cast. Miss Rodriguez would eventually call upon Miss Quigley to answer to a higher law besides herself and desist from imprinting her religious beliefs on others. Miss Quigley, however, would yell at Miss Rodriguez. Miss Quigley wouldn't be the only one accused of sexual harassment, as this would be the most shocking allegation. Whilst Lizzo would be on a European leg tour, she would perform at the Brit Awards show on February 23, 2023. After the show, Lizzo, in an unconventional invite, planned a night out at Amsterdam's infamous red light district, which had gained notoriety for debauchery. They would end up at Banana Bar, in which the cast would be strongly encouraged to engage in debauchery with the club's nude performers. Miss Davis particularly would bear the brunt of peer pressure that she would later succumb to, in which she was coerced to touch the breast of a nude woman performing. Lizzo's security was equally not spared from this lewd conduct, as Lizzo would badger her security to get on stage, upon which his pants were pulled down while a performer would proceed to whip him. On March 5, 2023, after a performance in France, she invited her cast members to what she said would be a learning experience for the dancers. Little did they know that it was a nude cabaret bar. Crazy horse. The dancers felt cheated, amongst other things, as they did not consent to such invite to such debauchery. The dancers would face another conundrum, as they would be encouraged not to take other dancing gigs, performing for other artists, even when Lizzo was not performing. Moreover, the dancers would be acutely aware that other staff, including vocalists, would be retained at 50% of their salary when Lizzo was not performing. The dancers would therefore request for a 50% retainer while Lizzo was not performing shows, and so that they didn't perform for other artists. Lizzo's management, in response to the dancers' request, would lowball their offer and drive a hard bargain by offering 25%. They would proceed to deflect from the negotiations and berate the dancers for their alleged unacceptable and disrespectful behavior while on tour, and ended with a subtle threat of termination. On April 4, 2023, the dancers and management would reach a consensus on the 50% retainer. Whilst this seems as a victory, the management acted as Indian givers. While they gave the 50% retainer, they took back the dignity of the dancers, often debasing the black dancers with racial undertones of them being lazy, unprofessional, and having a bad attitude. The management would equally cast aspersions that the dancers would indulge in alcohol before live performances, hence the suboptimal performance. This prompted Lizzo to have a meeting with the dancers on April 28, 2023 to address their unprofessionalism. In a thinly veined threat, she stated that none of their jobs was safe and that the dancers would have to re-audition in an almost 12-hour rehearsal, which upon its culmination, if Lizzo was dissatisfied with her dancers' performance, they would be fired. On April 23, 2023, Lizzo called another meeting in which she banned indulging in alcohol before performances. Miss Williams would rebut Lizzo's assertions and claim that none of them indulged in alcohol. This perceived questioning of authority would cost Miss Williams her job under the guise of budget cuts. The next at the chopping board would be Miss Davis, who suffered from anxiety, depression, and a binge-eating disorder. Lizzo and her fellow staff had a meeting with Miss Davis whereby they asserted that Miss Davis was deemed less committed to her role. They equally raised concerns of her weight gain. They would first suggest that Miss Davis take time off for therapy, but Miss Davis reassured them of her commitment to her role despite her personal afflictions. She would soon be fired. On April 27th, 2023, Lizzo would call for another meeting in which she expressed that the dancers should refrain from socializing with Miss Williams, who had been fired, and asserted that her authority should not be questioned. Thereafter, she gave the group performance notes. Miss Davis would record the meeting for review later on, as she had a condition in which she would be disoriented in stressful situations. On May 3rd, the dancers were in a wardrobe fitting, after which their phones would be confiscated. Lizzo had caught wind that the previous meeting was recorded. Lizzo was livid and hurling expletives at the cast and demanding that the one who recorded the meeting to come forward. Miss Davis would admit to it. She would proceed to explain herself and that she had already deleted the video. However, this was met with intense berating. She would be fired on the spot, and she would be detained in a room in which Lizzo's bodyguard would scour through her phone. Miss Rodriguez would attempt to quell the tension and opted to speak to Lizzo. She expressed that Lizzo did not handle the situation well and that she felt disrespected. She would tender her resignation with immediate effect. It's alleged that Lizzo would approach her, cracking her knuckles and balling her fist, and exclaimed, "You're lucky. You're fucking lucky." Miss Davis and Miss Rodriguez would meet up at the hotel and leave for the airport in fear of Lizzo. These dancers would end up suing Lizzo for creating or failing to prevent or remedying a hostile work environment in which the following permeated: 1. Sexual harassment from Lizzo and Miss Quigley. 2. Religious harassment. This was due to Miss Quigley and ceasing efforts to impress her religious beliefs on others and expect them to conform to her beliefs. 3. Racial harassment, as black members were derided with adjectives such as lazy, unprofessional, snarky, and having a bad attitude. 4th, disability discrimination. Miss Davis would claim discrimination in her firing due to her anxiety, depression, and binge eating disorder that led to adverse employment actions taken against her. 5th, intentional interference with prospective economic advantage. The dancers claimed that due to the restrictive covenants of having the dancers not work or perform for other artists while on break resulted in an economic loss. Miss Rodriguez would claim assault. Miss Rodriguez claims that when Lizzo approached her, cracking her knuckles and balling her fist, and that she sensed imminent threat from Lizzo of assault to her body. 7th, false imprisonment. Miss Davis argues that her confinement to a room against her will, while the bodyguard rummaged through her phone, deprived her of liberty and freedom of movement. At the moment, more dancers have come out to speak out against Lizzo. However, Lizzo has vehemently denied these allegations.